booties for black girl nerds.
Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. You've been a defining voice in the Southern culture through music. How do you translate that influence in Magic City and American fantasy?
Um, I'm the arrow. I point a direction where everybody should go. As far as this, as far as making this documentary, I'm not behind the. I wasn't asking questions and all that type of stuff. I just was like pointing fingers of like, this is where you need to go. This is who you need to talk to. Just basically telling Cole, what I mean, because he was from Philly. He never experienced Magic City, so to get him to experience it, um, um, I just had, you know what I mean? I take him there. Basically, I pointed the arrow like here you go. And I let him meet Magic, Wolf, the people in there. Once he got in there, he found his way. And I think he did the same thing once that I did to him. He started bringing people and introducing people to the city.
I mean, you have introduced this to all audiences now with this documentary because I've heard of Magic City. I've never been there myself, but I've heard of it through music, through pop culture, and that just speaks to like the mythos and really just the legendary, iconic aspect of this establishment. I wanted to ask for you, what role does music and sound design play in bringing the world of Magic City to life?
Um, well, all music, period, all music plays a major role. This documentary, it starts off in the 70s. So the music of the 70s and moving into the 80s and then moving into this rap era, the music is one of the most important components.
It really is. I learned a lot. I did not know about the origin story behind Tag Team, and whoop, there it is. So that was a really cool tidbit to learn
Oh,
about
yeah.
them. What excites you the most about being a part of this series that fuses culture, fantasy, and storytelling in such a fresh way?
Because the exciting part for me is that I get to bring it to life. I feel like being a ATLian, we don't have a lot of things that have shown our culture. We don't have a lot of things that um talk about our culture, and this puts a bright light on our culture and makes people understand why we talk about Magic City, what's all the hype about.
And I love that it breaks that sort of idea of what the strip club is, that it's about entrepreneurship, it's about business development, it's about the business behind what Magic City represents. And
Yes.
I really enjoyed that aspect of learning with the documentary. The South is often stereotyped and overlooked in popular media. I'm also from the South. I'm here in Virginia. How does Magic City push back against that in creating something new?
It doesn't. It doesn't. The club just stays the club. I think
Mm.
that, you know, I think if the club was trying to be anything other than what it's always already been, it wouldn't have lasted 40 years. I feel like it's a 40-year black establishment because they stuck to the truth of the way Magic always wanted the club to be.
I love it. I love how you keep it real through and through. I really enjoyed this. I was watching a screener of it on my laptop at the
Mm.
airport, and there was some nudity shots, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
got to
yeah.
close the laptop. uh, but I really thought you guys did an incredible job. So congratulations. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jermaine, for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate it. I did see this
Sure.
at South by Southwest. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited to talk to each of you respectively about this. Jamie, I'm going to start with you. Magic City is deeply imaginative and really a culturally rich story. So, what drew you to this project as executive producer?
Well, first and foremost, the Barney family. So I moved to Atlanta 8 years ago when we got into the NBA and ownership of the Atlanta Hawks basketball team. So the very first people, really, like the first week, that introduced themselves to me were Juju and Little Madge at a game and extended themselves and said, "Hey, introduce themselves. Anything you need, please let me know." And I thought, wow, how lovely. I didn't know what they did in the city. I had no clue who they were, but, and then they introduced me to their dad, Mr. Magic, who came to some games. So I realized that they were beloved members of this city. And then Cole went to college with my son. So I knew Cole from their college days, and he was writing Jermaine Dupri's memoirs, and there was a chapter on Magic City. And so he called his buddy Nick Ressler, who is my son, who works for the Atlanta Hawks, to kind of hook him up. And so, being able, knowing Cole and knowing how talented he is, it was easy for me to jump on board.
That's amazing. And Cole, for you, what inspired the concept of Magic City? Was there a personal connection to the setting or the themes for you personally?
Yes, so Jamie really just mentioned it. My only experience with Magic City actually was through Nick, who she mentioned. I had been to Atlanta really a small handful of times, all because essentially Nick had invited me down there, her son. And so my first sort of window into Atlanta culture was through the eyes of the Wrestler family and Jami Gertz. And then I was in Atlanta working with JD on, as Jamie mentioned, a book. And he was just telling me these incredible stories about this club that I was only kind of familiar with. But he was telling me about, him there with Janet Jackson and with Quincy Jones and with like globally famous drug dealers and state senators. And I remember thinking, where else in the world is this possible, where this collection of humanity would come together in, of all places, a strip club in Atlanta. So that was really the very genesis of, maybe there's something here. And then, many years and conversations later with Jamie and with JD and with so many other folks, we tried to capture that story in as authentic of terms as possible.
I mean, there's like this mythos behind Magic City because I had never been to Magic City, but I've heard of Magic City. I mean, it's that legendary and that famous where people just know about this establishment through whether it's through music or just through pop culture and entertainment. And Jamie, back to you as someone with decades in the industry, how do you see Magic City pushing the boundaries of storytelling, of television storytelling?
Well, I think that Cole did an amazing job of putting together all the details. He really captured the different groups at the different decades and what was going on in Atlanta during these time periods, and how could we weave a story through the eyes of this American family, this entrepreneurial family, and this city, and what this family did for a living. I mean, Mr. Magic went to Duke University. He got a full scholarship to play football. He was an athlete. He sold ink toner over the phone, became successful doing that, and had gone down south in his travels for work. And when he landed in Atlanta, he was just overcome because everyone looked like him. And everyone was a doctor and a lawyer and a dentist and a state senator. And he decided, most people were not moving down in 1984 to the South. And he decided to make his way down where people were finding success. And, And he decided he didn't know he was an entertainer, but he really is. And it's like the greatest juke joint, the greatest, place that you could go to get away from it. It's kind of like the Black Cheers. Many people go there just to relax, just to have a drink. The food is exceptional. And then it kind of morphed into the music. So many young hip hop and rap stars were from Atlanta, and they had no way of getting their music out there. And so they would come to the club, they would hand their mixtape to the DJ, he would play it, and the dancer would be like, I mean, sometimes they loved it and they danced, and sometimes they were like, And he'd have to give the mixtape back and say, young man, come back again. Let's see what you got another time. So it really, I think, through the years, it transformed into something, dare I say, magical.
It truly is. I mean, the tag team origin story, I had no idea about that. So I love how I learned so much information through this documentary, which was so compelling. Cole, back to you. What were some of the most challenging as well as the most rewarding parts of creating this narrative from scratch?
Yeah, I think that a story like this, consider the nature of this place. The whole nature of this place is that what happens here stays here. So the entire proposition that we would go down to Atlanta and try to tell stories that are by design not meant to be told is challenging. And that's why, the very first day, the conversation with Jami, who has such strong relationships and such a strong reputation in that city, was important because as she just said, she had a real long-standing relationship with the Barney family, and that opened doors to be willing to wait a second. Maybe these people are deserving of trust. Maybe they're going to try to tell this story the right way. I think that every step of the way, relationships were both the most challenging and most rewarding part of telling this story, because convincing people who are in an industry that frankly is oftentimes plagued by untrustworthy people that you are trustworthy and have no intentions other than trying to honor what they do. And this is not only the Barney family, but obviously all of the dancers, all of the entertainers, constantly having conversations that we're reinforcing, guys, we are not here to judge this side of the world. We're here to try to tell an incredible story of entrepreneurship, but also strength and independence. And that extends to everybody involved in the film, in the series. So I think that, at times that was the challenging part. But then as I look back on what is now many years of creation all together as a team, we've developed incredibly strong relationships, not only between each other as a team, but between so many of the people that make that place what it is. So that's the rewarding part. We're going to have a premiere in a week or so. And you want to talk about rewarding, seeing the smiles on everybody's faces that night is just going to feel really special.
Jami, was there any parts of the documentary that you just couldn't keep in, whether it was for time, or were there any issues narratively that just didn't fit within the context of this documentary that just didn't make the cut?
Yeah, I mean, if you looked, I think our cutting room floor would be a whole other docuseries, 5-part docuseries.
Wow.
And I was amazed, even though it is a sacred space, the people that were, once they knew that we were the right people telling this story, or hoped that we were, they were eager to talk about it. They were eager to talk about their experiences. And they had some great experiences, and there were some tough times. And we don't shy away from either one. And so I could have told so many stories. I know people are going to be upset who didn't make it into the end product. And that breaks my heart, because everyone who we interviewed had something to say. And we tried to be as wide ranging as we could, but it's a narrative tale that we had to tell.
Yeah. Well, listen, this was absolutely an incredible documentary. I hope maybe we get a director's cut of it, since there is so much footage yet to explore. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank
you.
you. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me. I love your room, by the way. It's super cool. It's such a vibe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm such a big fan of this documentary. I saw it way back at South by Southwest and loved every bit of it. I love the whole fantastical element of it all. And I wanted to know, as a director, how did you visualize the unique tone of Magic City, being part fantasy as well as part historical?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it right then and there. I think one of our earliest thesis that we were testing with this film was what is the fantasy of men set against the reality of women, and how do those sort of come into conflict with each other? How do those coexist in a space as like charged as Magic City? And I think separate from that, we were also interested in, okay, well, when you step inside Magic City, you take on a new persona. You like, you transform. Even the dancers. You have your stage name, then you have your sort of government name, and those exist at times as two different individuals. So this idea of fantasy was always at the sort of center of our thematic and narrative focus, which then led to a visual language that in times feels very much planted and grounded in the present day or in historical archival, and then other times is a bit more surreal, fantastical, taking us a place that's more emotive and more indicative of what Magic City feels like versus the brass tacks of like what Magic City is. And I think that was always of interest for myself, and then as from our production team as well.
You guys nailed it. It's so, because there's this mythos around Magic City, and I love that theme that you guys carry through with this documentary. Like I said, mythos, Magic City, it blends that myth, it blends memory and a cultural truth. How did you align those things creatively to help keep your vision cohesive?
Yeah, I mean, it's that I'm going to try not to give like a long-winded answer, but I think I tend to look at directing and I look at film, cinema, documentary a bit more like music. I was a musician long before I was a director, and so just like the ways in which you might have like a jazz ensemble and how the piano works in conjunction with the flute, but it might be in contrast to like the basis, like how all of those elements provide their own sort of flavor. I think that feeling is what I was trying to evoke with this Magic City series, both visually and sonically. And so to go back to your point, like if we've been living in a world of history for a moment, and maybe history is sort of like a bass line that's got a groove to it, like, well, here comes, a trumpet, or here comes a flute that is the fantastical element that's sort of like adding to the conversation. And now history and fantasy are in conversation with one another. And that sort of creating, orchestrating, this ensemble, that's what I was interested in with the series. Yeah.
I really love the cinematography in this documentary and docuseries. How did you use lighting, color, as well as camera movement to distinguish between the fantasy elements of it as well as the reality?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of tricks of the trade, but a lot of times reality will be grounded in handheld intimacy. Documentaries is like a handheld sort of feel where you feel like I'm actually in this lived in environment, but then you'll contrast that with sort of, steady cam, dolly, cranes, anything that sort of has sort of a more ethereal kind of floating feel to it that makes it feel almost like elevated or removed from it. So that's the camera movement of it all. And then I think from a lighting perspective, the club is such a hyper visual environment with just like the strobing lights and all of that upstairs. But downstairs, it's very much like a place of business, right? It's like we're counting the money, we're getting our looks together. It's the office. So I think playing with lighting and having a separation between the saturation of lights upstairs and the presentational, just sort of like even light downstairs was something that was important. Also, because we're showing again, the fantasy versus the reality. Like that's always the center point of our conversation, our visual language.
Well, you guys nailed it. I mean, historical storytelling obviously is very important in documentary subjects, but also like the visual storytelling makes it even more compelling and engaging to an audience. And you guys really showed it through and through in this docuseries. So thank you so much, Charles, for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation.
Of course, thank you. I know. I remember like an article from Black Girl Nerds during South by Southwest. So it's a long time coming. Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for reading that.
Yes, of course, of course.
Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.